Bees have been one of the initial animals that humans domesticated. They're so different from everything else. You have this hive structure, the one mother of the hive, and there's multiple fathers in there. That hybrid vigor, as it were, contributes a lot to how well hives behave.
Watching them work can be quite fascinating, and how they do things that humans in our society would never consider doing. Levels of altruism that don't exist in humans. They dedicate a very short life to going out and collecting pollen and nectar and then raising the next generation so they can take over.
Bees are a very intensive industry. You need to have the resources available when you need them.
The demand for pollination, for honey, is high enough that beekeepers are motivated to try to increase their colony numbers, and on a nationwide level they are increasing. What that hides, though, is that the profitability at the individual beekeeper level is not always high enough to keep beekeepers viable.
The adulteration problem is basically the biggest thing that we can look at right now to affect those revenues.
There is a huge amount of fraud going on in the honey business. We are seeing fake honey on the shelves here in Vancouver. It used to be that corn syrup was the biggest adulterant for honey. That has changed now to rice syrup. It is able to get past the existing tests for honey adulteration. When you look at export numbers, mainly Eastern Asia, we are seeing tripling of the amount of honey that is getting exported, yet there's no increase in bees. NMR is the new technique that we're looking at. It's like ringing a bell. You provide a magnetic pulse to your test substance and you hear how it sounds back. So when you look at a honey sample, you look at everything in there. It's like ringing a few thousand bells. When you test something like rice syrup, you only hear a few of those tones. You don't hear the full resonance that you should see there. When you start testing that honey, we are finding a lot of fraud going on in that honey business.
Mass spectrometry, as the name suggests, is measuring the masses of all of the different types of molecules that are in honey. And importantly, it's complementary in that it can detect compounds that NMR cannot detect, and vice versa. By having two different technologies that are able to detect different components of honey, you make authenticity tests that much stronger. My lab studies bees from a few different angles. We have looked at how bees respond to pathogens and how the pathogens are damaging bees. We've also tried to apply the technology to guide selective breeding. Breeding bees is very difficult because of how they mate. You can't actually inbreed bees. If you have too little diversity, the offspring are not viable. It's found in a few other animals, but it's very, very rare. It's a constant effort to try to select for a trait that you're interested in. One trait that we focused on is called hygienic behavior, which is a form of social immunity. Hygienic bees are very good at removing dead or dying nest mates, and by doing that, moving disease out of the colony as well, and keeping disease to a manageable level. Hygienic behavior is effective against varroa mites. Varroa is a parasitic mite that is kind of analogous to a mosquito. It feeds on adult bees, but also like a mosquito, the mite is a vector for viruses. So there's at least half a dozen viruses that are moved between bees by the mite, and those viruses are probably as damaging to bees as the mites themselves. If you can control the mites, then you also end up controlling those viruses. We are trying to help beekeepers use this selection for hygienic behavior in their own operations. people should eat local honey in particular because it supports the local industry. Getting a beehive to put on your balcony or in your backyard is not necessarily the best way to help. If you're not controlling disease, it certainly makes the problem worse for all the beekeepers that are around you. Planting the right plants around can help. Engaging with beekeepers, bee scientists, bee clubs, that's a great way to find out what you can do and how you can help.